You're listening to the home of cool, irreverent, and entertaining talk right here on LA Talk Radio. You're listening to The Art of Love with your host, Lucia, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Hello. Welcome to The Art of Love. My name is Lucia. I'm your host and a dating and relationship expert. And I'm here to entertain, educate, and enlighten you about love, dating, and relationships. Solve your dating dilemmas, take live calls, answer your emails, and speak to authors of books which I find interesting. And today we are going to help women understand men and men understand women. Yes, believe it or not, the age-old problem of the miscommunication. But we are going to look into man-ease and woman-ease with my guest, who is Dr. Yes, it's a doctor, Karen Gail Lewis. Hi, Karen. How are you?
I'm fine. Glad to be here.
Yes, glad to have you. So you've written a wonderful book called Why Don't You Understand? A Gender Relationship Dictionary. Love that title. As soon as I saw it, I said, I need to interview this lady, this doctor. And let me give your qualifications, which are many. You are a marriage and family therapist for a long time. We won't say how long because you said that makes you sound old. You have you have a master's in social work and a doctorate in consulting psychology, the author of 7 books, and you've been on the faculty of several universities in the U.S. and Chile. So welcome.
Great. Thank you.
So how did you come
and I can confess, it is just under 40 years I've been practicing.
Right, but you're only 50. You started
young. That's
right. And so how did you come to write this book, and who is it for?
Well, the reason I felt the need to fill in the number of years is because that's why I decided to write the book. Mm-hmm. After 38, 39 years of sitting with couples, married couples, single couples, and single men and women, talking about their relationships, I kept hearing a lot of the same things over and over again, and I kept saying a lot of things back. And finally, it just occurred to me that Mars and Venus, John Gray did a great job of popularizing the concept of Mars and Venus, but that isn't good enough. Mm-hmm. People have to know what to do.
Right.
And they needed to be able to be clear that some of the words they use are why they're getting in trouble, because they use similar words and they think they have similar meanings, and they don't. And I just decided finally that it was important for me to make this dictionary, and it is a dictionary.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
With 78 words that are used for differently by men and for women. And if men and women understand and can look up the words that they are having problems with, and we'll talk, I'm sure, at some point how to do that,
yes.
Then it really is a very handy tool for decreasing the number of repetitive conflicts that couples get into. Because one of the things I found is that couples, and you probably know, your listeners I'm sure know, mm-hmm. you tend to have the same argument over and over again.
Right.
The topic changes. And so it's an effort to really to make help couples stop that pattern. One of the things I found is that 65%, at least 65% of the arguments that couples have are related to these gender differences. And if they could remove them, then they'd still have some arguments,
mm-hmm.
but
right, of course.
Then they'd only have 35% arguments as opposed to 100% arguments or whatever.
Right. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, you talk about men expressing their affection and letting their partners know they love them by being helpful. But women don't see this as a sign of love. So how does that cause problems in relationships?
Okay, men men offer advice, which is the first word in the dictionary. Men offer advice and they offer suggestions as a way of saying, I really care and I want you to know I care enough that I'm going to offer you some advice. I'm going to give you some suggestions. Now, if the woman wants the advice and suggestions, there's not a problem. And one of the things about all these words, sometimes they're not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But if a woman has just come home, let's say, and been fired, or her best friend is stopped talking to her, and she just wants him to listen because she's really upset, and she wants to just emote. And he jumps in to say, well, here's what you ought to do. He thinks he's being helpful to her. He is not listening to her. He is belittling her because, for the most part, women often say, well, I know that, I can do that, but I'm not ready to do anything yet. Sure, I know I can file a grievance, but I don't want to talk about filing a grievance yet. I just want you to listen and tell me, to listen to how hurt I am. So the woman feels belittled. She feels that he's telling her she's dumb, she doesn't know how to handle it, and she feels he's not listening to her, which is really sad because the man really wants to be empathic.
Right. They think they're showing that they love them, but instead the woman perceives it differently.
That's right. And it's a matter of giving a gift. And in fact, gift giving are other words in the dictionary, but it's similar to that. It's giving a gift in the style that you, the giver, want to give, not in the way that the receiver wants.
Mm-hmm.
So, can I tell you one of the things that I do with most of these words, not all, but most of the words in the dictionary, I also give you alternatives how you can get around it. And so on this issue of advice, because it's important for women to understand that men are not doing it to belittle them. That's how it feels, but that's not why they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's important for women to understand that, and it's important for men to understand there's a better way that you can give your advice. And there's a better way you can give your caring. You can give your caring by asking, do you want advice? Do you want a suggestion? And then she can say yes, or she could say no, or she could say yes, but not now.
Mm-hmm.
Just listen to me complain first, and then you can give me a suggestion.
And also women always complain to me that, he never says I love you, but meanwhile they don't realize that just by his actions, he shows that he loves them.
Exactly, and that's another word, set of words, phrase in the dictionary, I love you, that exactly, men do it very, very differently than women. And so you're right, that women would not hear, why don't you file a grievance, or why don't you write a letter to your best friend, or pick up the phone and call her or something. It's not saying, I love you.
No.
She doesn't hear it that way anyway. And that brings me, I should say at the onset that I talk about these languages as maleese and femailese, like Chinese and Japanese.
Right.
So maleese and femailese. And it's not that one is right and one is wrong, or one is better than the other. Women speak their language, and that is their language, and men speak their language, and it is right for them. And when they're talking with their own sex, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
The problem only comes when they're talking with each other. So it's not a matter of, I want you to do it my way. It's, you got your way, I got mine. How are we going to negotiate this?
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Now, of course, men are notorious for never wanting to apologize. So why is it that men have such a hard time trying to say, I'm sorry?
Everyone knows the joke about men not asking for directions, although
Yes.
Some men do.
Yes. Well, now we have
but
GPS.
It is true that, I'm sorry?
We have GPS now. No one needs to ask for directions anymore.
Right. Men have been, from childhood on, men have been raised, and for centuries, and then for each generation,
Mm-hmm.
have been raised that they are not supposed to be a loser. They're supposed to be a winner. And there's a built-in competitiveness for men, that for males, that is not built in from childhood on for females. And so if a man admits, I made a mistake, that is saying, whoops, I am a loser. And I go into much more detail on that in the book, but in the dictionary, but in the concept winner, loser. But briefly, to understand this, is for a man to be able to say, I apologize, that means he has been a loser, he's made a mistake, and that's not good. It makes him feel bad about himself, and therefore she will not see him so well, is what he thinks. But there's something else also. Research has shown that men tend to externalize. When there's a problem, they put the blame outside of themselves. Mm-hmm. Women, when there's a problem, they put the blame internal. They take the blame on themselves, self-blame.
Yes.
Men externalize. So for a man to say, I'm sorry, that means he's taken the responsibility onto himself. So he's much more likely to say, if he knocked a vase of hers off the table, he's much more likely, rather than the first sentence being, I'm sorry I broke the vase, which we women more than likely would do, his more likely might be, why was that vase sitting there?
Right.
That vase shouldn't have been there. Or you put that vase there, or something that, so it's either blaming her or blaming the vase, or the whatever.
Right. So maybe her response...
And it all has to... And maybe what?
No, I was going to say, maybe her response, when he says that, her response can be, apology accepted.
Well, exactly, because since women take blame, she would say, oh, it must be my fault. I put the blame. It must be my fault that vase was there. Now, I'm being silly because not all women would do that.
No.
But there are lots and lots and lots of examples where women, in fact, research shows that if a man steps on, if anyone steps on a woman's foot, this was just amazing, this piece of research, that if someone steps on a woman's foot, she's likely to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But the sorry does not mean it doesn't mean I'm sorry my foot was underneath yours.
Right.
The sorry means I'm sorry I'm putting you in a position where you have done something that is really bad. You have stepped on my foot, or you've done something that makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that, to me, when I read that research, I was just awed by that, because we women, all of us, know how often we say, I'm sorry.
Every day.
And it doesn't have anything, it doesn't have anything to do with apologizing for something that we have done.
Right, we're not sorry.
But, much of the time.
Not really. Okay, now let's move on to compliments, because you say women need compliments more than men. Right.
This is a real biggie. A lot of these are real biggies.
Yeah,
this is another one of the real biggies. And it's a catch-22 for a man, because a woman really does need to hear, you look lovely.
Yes, we do.
And the catch-22 is, if the woman says, how do I look? And the man says, you look lovely, she's likely to say, you're just saying that because I asked.
Right.
Which may be true. It may be it didn't occur to him to tell her, but she was thinking it. Mm-hmm. He may not be lying. He may never have occurred to him to say anything. So he's in a real catch-22 with that, and women need to understand how they set men up that way. But women need to hear that things about them that the man likes. Yes. And men are less likely to need that. I know you read the book, so you probably remember the shoebox and the mantle.
Yes, we're going to get to that. Mm-hmm.
Can I talk about that? Because that's related to this.
Okay.
If a woman has... Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
You say I'm apologizing. Is that okay?
Shame on you.
If a man has something very special, and I'm using the relationship as a metaphor now for something very special, he wraps it up very gently and puts it into a shoebox and tucks it under his bed. And you can't see my hand motions, but I'm tapping the box, and it goes under the bed.
Uh-huh.
If a woman has something very special, she puts it on her mantle. And every time she walks by, she takes it, she shines it, she readjusts it, she dusts it, she calls people over to look at it. And that's one of the many core differences between men and women. So a compliment to a woman, she is out there and she wants to be adjusted and dusted, and she wants to be, I'm mixing back and forth to the metaphor now, but she wants someone to be the man that she loves to be paying attention and commenting on her and on the relationship and how much he cares about her. He's got it. It's tucked under his bed. He doesn't have to comment on it.
Mm. Yeah.
So inside the male-ese, there's nothing wrong with what he's doing. Inside female-ese, There's nothing wrong with what she's doing. It just says that and to be together is a problem.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to a big one, which is conversation. Because you say for men, the purpose of conversation is it's not chit chat. It's just to report information. Where of course it's the opposite for women.
Exactly. So if you start with core difference in the purpose of conversation, the woman wants to connect and relate, and the man wants to get information. You can see where not all, but many conversations are going to have problems right at the onset.
Yes.
Because the woman just wants to be talking and chatting with him and having him respond to her, and so they feel close. She feels close to him. And he's waiting for a question, another word in the dictionary, because then he'll know what information she needs. If she's just talking, he's going to sit there and wait. And wait.
Like I'm doing now.
And yes, and she's going to get angrier and angrier because he is not relating back to her.
Yeah, he's waiting.
That's right. That's right. He is waiting. And he's waiting for a question because men need a question.
Yes.
If they're going to, not all the time again, I want to be clear, not all the time, but when you come across problems, this is what's happening.
So then what should the guy do? Instead of waiting for a question, just interject once in a while?
The answer, of course, I'm a woman. The answer, of course, he should.
Yes, of course. Damn it.
But for the men, that doesn't really work for them because that isn't how their brain works.
Yeah.
So women, men need to know if the woman is going on, and he may want to say, "Is there something you want from me, or do you want me just to listen?" Or he could, if she's going on and repeating herself, and it's something she wants from him, but she hasn't gotten to the end, and she keeps going on and on and on, as women tend to do, particularly if men don't respond, if they don't jump in to respond.
Yeah.
He could say, could you put a period, and then I'll know that you're finished talking so I can say something, because men may very well just wait.
Right, which is also, the way that it's different with women in the sense that when the guy is talking, if he pauses, they don't realize he's just thinking and he hasn't finished saying what he's going to say, and so they jump in when he hasn't finished.
Right. Exactly.
So you can see how...
And so, you would think that something as simple as conversation between two people who love each other would not be a problem. And for some reason that we don't have time to go into now,
yes.
But for some reason at the beginning, when a couple first gets together, they maneuver around this. But once they get familiar with each other, it is amazing how many couples have real problems having a simple conversation.
Not until
and so the man often... I'm sorry, what?
Well, not up until now. Now they'll read your dictionary and they won't have problems having a conversation.
Right.
If they read the book.
So the man gets quieter and the woman talks more.
Yes.
And,
and that's why men say women talk too much.
Yes. And research does show, I don't know if this part's true, you hear about it. I've never done any research on this, and I've never heard who actually did the research, so I can't. But it's funny, whether it's true or not, that women talk 7 times more than men. No, women talk 7 times more words per day than a man. Frankly, I think it's 70 or 700 times more words.
No, and then actually, I think it was like men say 7,000 words a day and women say 20,000. That was the old myth.
Oh, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, 7 times more. That'd be a lot. But then something came out last year, some sort of study saying that there really wasn't that much of a difference. So who knows what the truth is now?
Well, one of the things that I don't know if this has been studied, I certainly haven't, but I have seen it, is that men talk a lot about what they want to talk about because they're passing information. They may be telling you about the news, something happened on the news. They may be telling you what goes on at work. So they use a lot of words, but in a different category of words than women who use words telling you what's happening between people or what's going on in their life, emotional world, or what they did during the day.
Yeah, it's just the conversation is different.
So it's back to a different purpose.
Right. Okay, so let's move on from that to, and this I found fascinating because I actually didn't know it, but I suspected it, that men, they look at relationships from a point of view of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, whereas women are thinking that they need to prevent problems from becoming bigger. So explain that a bit.
Okay, another biggie,
Yes.
and as you say, you know it. Some of these things you just know until you read it. You don't know that you know it, you just know it. And then when you, as you said, you read it and then you say, yeah, I knew that.
Uh-huh.
There's a story that I used to hear when I was a kid about the little boy who was always loved taking things apart.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be a clock or a toaster or whatever, and then he would put it back together and he would have one or two pieces left over. And it'd be a message that you shouldn't be messing with these clocks or whatever. But that actually is a good metaphor for what happens for men, because they really have been trained. The message that they have learned from childhood on is if you deal with a problem, you could make it worse. And therefore, men tend not to raise an issue until it is really, really bad. And sometimes it's until they're ready to walk out the door. Women, on the other hand, have been raised that it's their responsibility, and this is historic, going back to biblical days, actually, but being that it is their responsibility to fix the relationship, to have a relationship. For single women, they're supposed to have one. If they don't, it's their fault.
Right.
And if they do have a relationship and there's a problem, it's their job to fix it. So women are on the alert at all times.
We're always on alert.
Exaggerating here. But to look for potential problems or a small problem and try to draw attention and let's fix this before it gets bigger. So here's the woman is saying, here's a little problem, let's fix it before it gets bigger. And here's the man saying, if it's not big, I'm not going to touch it. Causes a lot of conflict.
I know. So what do we do as women?
Well, I have some tips in the back of the dictionary. I have basically some work exercises, practice exercises, and one of them is steps for how to have a discussion, so that men have some guidelines. One reason men don't like to get into resolving a problem or identifying a problem is because, as we were just saying, women are better with words than men. So why are you going to go into a discussion with someone who has skills that you don't have?
Right.
In my office, I often use the example of, boxing or wrestling, where there are different weights. I don't know anything about
weight
wrestling
classes.
or boxing.
Yeah.
But I think it's wrestling where you have different weight categories.
Yeah.
And they don't put light weights in with heavyweights.
Right.
Well, women are verbal heavyweights.
We are.
Why would a man willingly get into a man who's a verbal lightweight? Why would he get into a conversation with a woman who is a verbal heavyweight? So when you ask the question, what do you do about it? You need guidelines that equalize it, so that the woman is contained, so she doesn't run over him, and so the man has steps what he can do, so he can hold his own.
Okay, so that's...
And some of these, I don't know if you want me to mention some of these steps, but they're...
No, they can buy the book and find out.
Okay, that's right.
Here. Hey, but so the old, this whole thing, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So is that why men seem to not propose until basically the woman is out the door or about to walk out the door?
That is certainly why, or why a couple is having problems and the man won't say, "Ooh, I think there's a problem," until she's out the door. Yes, absolutely. I can't tell you the number, hundreds of couples over the years, where the man's rarely the one to come in to initiate the call, but when he's the one, 98% of the time, he does the call because she has just walked out the door or said, "I'm walking out the door." So
so like
they don't.
What are we? So what are women supposed to do? It's like now, if we want to solve a problem, we have to threaten to leave or leave.
No, but that's where these 13, and I think I have them on my web somewhere. These 13 steps, but they're in the book also. That when you understand what they are, she can raise she can raise topics. And what happens, let me say it this way, what happens, the woman's unhappy about something with the man, and she raises it in such a way that he doesn't hear her.
Mm-hmm.
So he can honestly say, I never heard her say she was unhappy, because she never said very explicitly, I'm unhappy, with a question mark on the end, and then one or two sentences. And what she would do is she'd go on and on and on about all the things she's unhappy about, which is just a complaint. And men have learned to tune that out, because they're waiting for the question. If there's no question, they tune them out. So women have to learn how to present one complaint at a time,
Mm-hmm.
how to do it in 3, maximum 4 sentences,
Yes.
end with a question,
Mm-hmm.
and then a lot of other steps for removing blame, because if you blame, you will shame him, and men are very acutely sensitive to feeling like a loser, feeling shame.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very specific steps that, if a woman takes, will work very well in relation. And men like structure. Men are very good because it's information. If they know what the structure is, they can handle it. And so women need to know that and present it differently. And if they don't, if the woman just starts complaining, then, because it takes only one of them to make a change, the man can say, wait a minute, this isn't working for me. Can we go by the guidelines? And, I do suggest couples have these guidelines written out so they can go back and use them when they get stuck.
Right. I mean, one of the guidelines is you say you set a time to talk. So why is that important?
Oh, so important, because we women,
we can talk
we've just
anytime.
been doing whatever. Right. We can do it anytime, and it's always on our mind.
Yes.
Always on our mind. So if something comes up, we say it at that moment. Well, at that moment, he may be having gas pains and thinking whether he has to go to the bathroom or not. He may be watching TV or working the computer. He may be worried about money and doing mental, financial calculations. His mind isn't tuned in. So a woman may be able to switch over very easily, but the man can't, especially not for something that's emotionally charged that he's not going to do very well in any way. So it's really important to say, can we set a time, and let the man pick a time, and make sure that it's no more than an hour, because men just can't do more than an hour.
Mm-hmm. If that long.
And that gives the man a sense of control. So, and he knows what the topic's going to be, and he knows when it's going to be, and he can gear up for it.
Okay, good. Let me ask you.
And if a woman does that, then she has a man who's more ready and willing to talk.
Attentive. So let me ask you something that it's not in the book, but since I have you on the phone, I figure you might know the answer to it. Do guys like it when a woman pursues them?
It depends.
On the guy?
There's some guys love a woman pursuing them until the men are caught, and then the women back off, and then the men are, hey, wait a minute, what's happened? Some men feel very threatened by a woman there's a new book out that talks about the men who feel very threatened by women who pursue them, who are taking the lead. I don't think it's enough to say. I think there are some men who really like it, some men who don't. But what is true, whoever does the pursuing, once they're caught and they're together, the man's going to tuck it under the shoebox, tuck it in the shoebox and under the bed, and then the woman's going to feel like she's always pursuing.
Ah. So maybe she shouldn't be pursuing.
Well, it's just that she then feels annoyed. Wait a minute. You were pursuing me before, or you liked it when I pursued you before, whichever way it was.
Yeah.
And now you're pulling away.
Right. Now I'm in the shoebox. Okay.
Right. One of the best. I love that. Now I'm in a shoebox. And that's one of the things. I'm so glad you said it, Lucia, because a sense of humor is really important. To be able to have a sense of humor And if a woman is feeling the man doesn't care, if they've already talked about these things, she can say, I feel like I'm in a shoebox. Do you mind taking me out? And that feels a lot better to the man than her saying, you don't ever talk to me, you ignore me, you pretend like I'm not here, with complaints that make him feel like a loser.
Right.
So she could humorously say, I feel like I'm in a shoebox.
Hey.
Please take me out.
It'll be a new term everybody will be using. Remember, I coined it.
Right.
With help from you. So let's talk about another biggie, and that is the man's ego. So is it true that men have a fragile ego? I know. Funny.
Can I restate that? Is it
Go
true
ahead.
that women have been raised to believe that men have a fragile ego?
Okay.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. In every course that I've ever taught, and I'm talking about courses I've taught for graduate students who are all in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. I'm not talking about young kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about grown adults. When I ask the men, have you ever heard, or did you know, have you ever heard, or did you know that women think you have a fragile ego? A small handful, sometimes none, sometimes one or two people say they've heard it or they know it.
Mm-hmm.
Many men don't even know that women are raised that way.
Wow.
And so many men, when I ask that question, are angered. That's insulting. Why would you think I have a fragile ego?
Uh-huh.
And the irony is because that means that he's a loser.
Right. He's weak.
So women are raised to think that men have a fragile ego, which is the very thing that men are raised not to have, is be a loser.
So they don't have it?
So, no, men do not have a fragile ego.
Okay, all right. Good to know.
But what does happen, what I can tell you what does happen is that women talk to men sometimes as assuming that they would react the way we women react. So I don't want to say anything that might hurt your feelings, because if you said it to me, it would hurt my feelings. But most of the time, the things that we don't want to say to a man because it's going to hurt his feelings isn't going to hurt his feelings. We just think it would hurt ours, so we don't say it.
Ah, okay. All right. Glad we got that myth taken care of. So let's talk about sex. Everyone's favorite topic.
Okay.
Now you mentioned pre-foreplay, which is great. It's true. Before foreplay, we need pre-foreplay. So please explain what that is.
Okay. Men who are listening, are there some men listening here?
I hope so. I'm sure there are.
The men who are listening know that. Okay, let me back up and say the word intimacy is one of the very specific words that men say intimacy and they mean intercourse. Mm-hmm. Women say intimacy and they mean all the feelings that make them feel wonderful and loved and cared about and connected to the man so that they want to have intimacy.
Intercourse.
And one of those things, now men have learned over the years that you have to do foreplay. They may not want to, but if you're going to get a woman interested, you got to play around a little first.
That's right.
And I'm being a little silly here, but men love it when I laugh, when I say that in joke, because they know it's true.
Right. It's true.
But there's what I call one step before foreplay. Mm-hmm. Women have to have the mindset. They have to be ready.
Yes. To
even think about, because we're busy thinking about, did I get the lunch for the kids, or what, the carpool for the kids tomorrow, and I still have the laundry to do, or I forgot something at work and I need to, so our minds are constantly thinking of all the things we need to do and take care of. And for a man to come in and say, I'm ready to have sex right now, the woman is it's sort of like the man's at the airport and the woman's at the train station.
Uh-huh. What's that mean?
They both may want to get on this trip, but they're not at the same place.
Oh, okay.
And so pre-foreplay allows some transition time for the woman to get to the point where she even wants to think about getting involved sexually, which will include foreplay at that point. Mm-hmm. And men don't understand this. And one reason they don't is because when men have a penis, I can say this over the radio,
yes,
right?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Men have a penis, and they get erections. And they get erections physiologically.
All the time.
It just happens.
Yes.
And they have to pay attention to it because it's on their body. And the best comparison I have for women is that for a woman who's been pregnant, you know that you're constantly tuned into what's happening inside your body, because especially when there's movement there. That's sort of a parallel I give to how women understand what it's like for a man to have this thing that moves. And of its own accord. He doesn't have to do anything. It just moves of its own accord.
Yeah, wow.
So something can happen. His pants rub too tightly and suddenly he has an erection.
Wow.
And so now he's ready for sex. And men need to understand women don't do that.
No.
And women need to understand it isn't that the man is always, grabbing at them. It is what happens that leads them to that point. So then they can talk about how we can negotiate this. And I said that a couple of times, that the biggest thing that men and women need to do is a 4-letter word that ends in K and does not start with an F.
Right.
Take a guess what it starts with.
I already know the answer to that.
Okay.
I read the
right.
book.
It starts with a T.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And they have to talk. They have to negotiate. Once you understand males and females, then you have the opportunity to say, okay, what do we do? Let's talk about how we're going to handle this the next time it comes up. Not in the middle of a fight, but when time is quiet, how do we handle this situation? Because it comes up a lot. What should we do so that I don't snap at you and you don't snap at me and whatever.
Right. Yeah, because, like guys are ready to have sex, of course, anytime, and the woman, and so if he tries to have foreplay, the woman's like, wait, I wasn't even thinking about that. I need to get into a mindset. That's why women need romance, at least a bit of romance.
Right. Exactly. And I have a headache is the best response, the metaphorical response that comes out. It isn't, I wouldn't mind, but I'm not there yet.
Yes.
What comes out is, I don't want to. And when the woman says no, the man feels bad, and he feels unloved. And so he pulls away. Mm-hmm. Or he tries harder.
Yes, which is worse.
Because he doesn't want to feel unloved, he tries harder, which makes her madder. So then he pulls away, or he tries harder. Yeah. So it's a really bad cycle that is unnecessary.
Right.
If men and women understand each other's language.
Well, now we do. So, what is the female aphrodisiac?
Okay. Again, it's what we were basically talking about.
Okay.
It is women need some kind of romance.
Okay.
Or some kind of if you will, the pre-foreplay.
Yeah. And
one of the best aphrodisiacs is this 4-letter word that ends in K that we all now know starts with a T.
Right.
Having a man talk about what he feels and sharing with a woman what she feels is far more arousing to a woman than a romantic dinner with candles and a diamond or a diamond necklace. Women may like those things, but what's really going to get right to her heart is and make her really feel ready and wanting to make love is feeling this emotional connection with his being able to share with her. Can I interrupt for a second to say that a number of all of these are in the book, and the book is Why Don't You Understand a Gender Relationship Dictionary. But all your listeners can get excerpts from the book by going to for doctor. I'm sorry, don't go there. Let me give you a better one to go to. Go to genderdictionary.com.
Okay.
If you go to genderdictionary.com, you will be able to get your free excerpts. And then if you want, you can buy the book right there also. But you can just get the excerpts for some of the words and really get a sense of what it is that you and I are talking about today.
Right. Okay, cool. I was going to mention that at the end, but I'm glad you mentioned it now. Let's move on to love and hate, because I found this really interesting, because you say that when people are afraid to feel the full extent of their anger, they're actually preventing themselves from feeling the full extent of their love. And, of course, you know that women have been socialized not to express their anger. Exactly.
Another catch-22.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I will ask you a question that you already know the answer.
Okay.
But we can pretend like you don't.
Okay.
What's the opposite of love?
Indifference.
Right. Everyone else is going to say hate.
Right.
And you're going to be wrong. You know the answer is indifference.
Yeah.
And the opposite of hate is not love, it's indifference. because love and hate are both emotional, and you have to be emotionally invested.
Yeah.
They're intense. Indifference is, therefore, indifference is the opposite. You have to really love someone enough to get really angry at them.
You have to love them enough
And
to
if you
hate
don't
them.
I'm sorry?
You have to love them enough to hate them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if people are uncomfortable with the word hate, then you can say, be mad at them. Some people are, get really intimidated by the word hate.
Yeah.
I don't. But if you are not allowing yourself to the free reign of expressing, and appropriately, there are a lot of ways to express your hate or your anger without screaming and yelling. In fact, those are neither of those are good ways. Nobody hears when they're being screamed at.
No.
But if you can express your anger in a very clear, direct, quiet way, you'll get the point across, and you'll also have a better chance of resolving what you were angry about, which then causes both parties to feel intense desire for each other because they've just had this intense experience. And so it's not surprising that very often after a really good argument, a clean argument, the couples then want to make love.
And so then women just need to learn to express their anger, but in a constructive manner.
That's right. Neither men nor women do anger well.
No.
Men tend to either explode or to be silent or silently walk away, sit there silently or get up and storm out of the room. Women tend to cry.
Yeah.
or complain. They may yell, but they're just complaining. None of these styles work very well for getting your point heard. And the point of being angry, I would think, is to be able to express what you're angry about and have some resolution that makes you feel better and takes care of the problem. And so the book is filled, the dictionary, it is a book, but I call it it is a dictionary.
It's both.
Is filled with a variety of ways to learn how to do that.
Right. Okay, good. Because, we all get angry and we don't know what to do with it, and we need to learn to express it in a way that the other person will hear us and do something about it.
Exactly. That's right. And that's the important thing. Express it in the way the other person can hear it, because otherwise you're just venting. And it may make you feel better, but it doesn't make a difference.
No. And then eventually they'll pull
away. The other
away.
person has I'm sorry?
Eventually they'll want to pull away if you're always expressing your anger in a non-constructive manner.
Exactly. And then you repeat the same fight over and over
Yes.
and over. I've told you 100 times.
If I told you once, I told you 1,000 times.
That's right. But if the person isn't listening to the first one, they certainly
matter.
didn't listen to the 1,000th one.
Yeah, and
If they're being yelled at.
touching on something you said earlier, when guys say, when their wife leaves or their girlfriend leaves, and they go, "I didn't know she was unhappy," and the wife is like, "What? How could you not know?"
Exactly. That is exactly it.
Yeah. So now into the phrase "I love you," and this was something I always wondered, because I always heard that for guys feel a connection to a woman through making love. So explain how that works, because it's not the same for women.
I'm sorry, there was a gap in the phone, so I didn't hear that.
Yeah, under the expression "I love you," I've always heard that guys, in order to feel close to a woman, they need to have sex with her, whereas it's different for women. So explain that a bit.
Right, okay. You said make love, and that threw me off because it's sex.
Okay. Same thing, no?
What happens is, this is another train in airport
Okay.
Situation where the couple really want to take this trip together and they're just not in the same place. The man, particularly if a man is feeling distant from a woman and he wants to feel close, he will say, he'll say, "I want to make love, let's go to bed," whatever it is. The intent is that he wants to have intercourse. He wants to make love with her.
Mm-hmm.
The problem for her is if she's not feeling connected to him, as we've talked about before,
Right.
she doesn't want it.
Mm-hmm.
For her, particularly if there's tension, she needs to feel that they've gotten close first before she wants to. So the man has to feel, the man wants in order for the man to feel close, he wants to have sex first, which allows him to feel close. And in order for a woman to want to have sex, she has to feel close. And so she's at the airport and he's at the train station.
Yeah. So again, what do we do?
That 4-letter word ends in K.
Yes.
And so they can negotiate. And that's a particularly difficult one to negotiate because the woman really can't push herself to feel close enough to want to make love. And the man won't know how to go about doing what she wants so that he can get what he wants. So they really do have to come to some kind of, and that's where if the man understands pre-foreplay, that's something, again, men like rules, they like structure. He can know that if he wants to make love, that he needs to be talking with her before they go upstairs.
Right.
Assuming their bedroom is upstairs. Or that he can say, let's play a game of cards. Can you stop doing the laundry or whatever you're doing, and let's play a game of cards. And then later that night he can say, let's make love. Because he will have already let her know that he is connecting with her in some way. So he can do that. Mm-hmm. And the woman can say, I don't feel like it now, but if we can do something together later today, I'll feel like it later this evening.
Yeah, because this is where I think men have the misunderstanding that the women are they're withholding sex as a weapon. They don't realize, no, the women just don't want to have sex because they're mad at him or whatever.
That's right. And so the men want to know what to do. Particularly, I can't say they want to know what to do about everything, mm-hmm. but this, yes. They want to know what to do.
They do.
They want sex. That's why I'm using the word sex, sex or intercourse, not lovemaking, because lovemaking has different meanings.
Right.
There are lots of ways to make love without having intercourse.
Mm-hmm.
So men want intercourse, and therefore they're going to be very happy to learn that there are things that they could do to make sure they have a better chance of having it happen.
Exactly. Okay. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here and cleared up a lot of myths about male and female communication. I'm glad you wrote this book because we needed it. And there's nothing out there like it that I know of.
No, there's not. And let me tell you, if there were, I would not have written it because in fact, I was in the middle of another book when I decided I had to write this one, so I put the other book aside.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's because it's important. That's why.
Yes.
And
yes. And so I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to wrap up, but go ahead.
Well, I'm good. Maybe we're going to say the same thing. So, you see, I said I'm sorry.
Too much. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I was just going to say, yes, that your website is, well, you gave the website before, genderdictionary.com.
Right. And that's where they can get free excerpts, and if they want to buy the book. Actually, I should say that there's a pre-publication discount going on right now. The book is being delayed, so it's supposed to have been out already, and it's not going to be out now probably till the end of August.
Okay.
So the pre-publication discount you can get on that same webpage, genderdictionary.com.
Wonderful. Discount is always good. So I'm glad at least it's available online. And thank you so much for being on. It was very enlightening.
Thank you. I've enjoyed talking with you.
Well, thank you. Okay. Take care.
Thank you, Lucia.
Bye.
Good. Bye-bye.
All right. That was Dr. Gail Lewis. No, Karen Gail Lewis. 3 names. Can't forget. And, of course, the book was Why Don't You Understand? A Gender Relationship Dictionary. And that is it for me for today. Thank you so much for joining me. My website, theartoflove.net, where you can sign up for my free weekly newsletter, and also join me on Facebook because I put personal pictures up there of what's been happening in my life. I went to Corvette Mike's wedding last night. If you've been listening to my shows, you know he was on the show, and I explained, or had him explain how he came to marry this girl, this woman, and I'm actually going to have her on later on another time because I want to get her point of view because something very interesting happened I found out last night. So you'll want to stay tuned for that at another show on another date. You can also get excerpts from my book, Lucia's Lessons of Love, at lessonsoflove.net. And finally, remember that love inspires, empowers, uplifts, and enlightens.
You're listening to The Art of Love with your host, Lucia, right here on LA Talk Radio.